Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. Let me know in case the sound is not okay. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to this event on the circular economy, how we can make a difference as consumers. This is actually the virtual launching event for the new UNECE FAO publication, Circularity Concepts in Forest-Based Industries. This event is organized by the Joint UNECE FAO Forestry and Timber section in Geneva in cooperation with the FAO Liaison Office in Geneva. On the program today, after a short opening part with EC and FAO speeches, two experts will present the furniture and fashion as example of forest-based industry where we all can play a role to support the transitions to a circular economy. These presentations will be followed by question and answer session where you can ask questions by raising your hand. Remember to do so as the chat has been deactivated. So let me start by giving you a little bit of background of the work of UNECE on the circular economy. Circular economy is actually a priority topic on the ECE agenda as a key tool for achieving SDGs within the United Nations as a whole. Last year, actually, the 69th session of the Economic Commission for Europe was held under the theme Promoting Circular Economy and Sustainable Use of Natural Resources in the ECE region. Their member states committed to step up efforts to promote circular economy approaches and the sustainable use of natural resources. But now it's really time for concrete actions. In the mind of many of us, circular economy is actually associated with recycling. And that's indeed what we can do at the individual level, at least in some sectors where this is quite widely practiced. But while the recycling of any mineral or fossil material might require less energy than the original extraction, it does always require energy. Forest-based products, on the contrary, do not require additional energy input to close the loop. Wood and wood products can provide energy in the final application, and it's nature that closes the material loop for us. And it only needs water, some nutrients, and sunlight to achieve so many benefits: clean water, oxygen, shade, non-wood forest products, and biodegradable wood products, all available to the public by the wisdom and long-term vision of forest owners and managers. So this is why it is important to recognize the role of forest and the forest sector in the transitions towards a circular economy, which is indeed the objective of today's event. Let me just conclude with a few interesting facts from the sector, including, the facts that were included in a recent research from the University of Graz in Austria. For instance, an interesting fact is cardboard could be recycled more than 25 times, not as we earlier believed, only 5 to 7 times. Also, the practical experience from the fashion industry tell us that forest-based fibers can be recycled as long as they are not treated with coatings that make them non-biodegradable. These aspects need to be taken into consideration when we make consumer choices, when we buy furniture, when we buy fashion, but when we buy also products for our home and when we build our homes. The ECE FAO study analyzes how the concept of a circular economy can be applied in the forest-based industries in 5 forest-based value chains. First one is sawnwood, bioenergy, and construction. The second is the furniture industry. The third is the paper and pulp industry. And the fourth is the cellulose-based fibers. And the fifth, cellulose-based plastics. The analysis covers not only the potential opportunities for each sector from going more circular, but also for the first time lists concrete actions by business and consumers on how to accelerate the circular economy, as well as recommendations for policymaking. Today, we are going to hear 2 examples, as I mentioned, of consumer goods industries which depend on forest as well and where we all have, of course, a role to play. As I mentioned, this is furniture and fashion. Now, before we go to the presentations, I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Dominique Bourgeon, is the director of the FAO Liaison Office in Geneva, to give us some also opening remarks from the FAO side. Thank you, and over to you, Dominique, and very good to see you today with us.
Thank you very much, Paola. I hope you can hear me well. Okay, so thanks again, and I'm very pleased to be with you this morning, and extremely grateful, I would say, for the opportunity to engage in support of the very important work being undertaken by the Joint UNECE, FAO, Forestry and Timber section. I think this is great work is going, and I'm very pleased to participate. I'm particularly pleased to join for the launch of such an important ECFAO study, which confirms the efficiency of the forestry sector in support in using all material throughout the production process and along its various value chains. As you know, in FAO, we are looking at the role of forest in the green recovery and in building inclusive and sustainable economies. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, we launched the FAO State of World Forest, which is, as you know, a flagship publication also known as SOFO. This report, once again, provided evidence on the importance of a sector which provides 33 million jobs, which provides ecosystem services valued at 7.5 trillion US dollar and stores 662 billion tons of carbon globally. Such a contribution of the forestry sector is, of course, very interesting and can inform a transition towards circular system in other strategic sectors which today struggle with out of proportion environmental footprints. However, in doing so, we have always to keep in mind that replacing fossil materials with forest-based products will also increase the demand for wood. This at a time the regenerative capacities of forest ecosystem are threatened by climate change, landscape degradation, soil erosion, as well as by forest fires and pests, of course, raises the question of whether fossil material can really be replaced with wood as a fair and sustainable solution in the long term. And this is actually a reminder of the importance of sustainable, responsible forest management practices at the global scale, which are key to the natural cycle of forest renewal and the sustainability of forest-based value chains. However, while deforestation is a major problem in some part of the world, it is not the case, of course, as you know very well, everywhere. And in Europe, particularly, and in actually the most of the northern hemisphere, forest areas are growing, and forest ecosystem have the capacity to naturally restore the quality of their resources. Forests can actually become a source of renewable and biodegradable products, which can substitute for finite and polluting materials in a larger scale than it is taking place today. But for that to happen and ensure circularity and sustainability in the long term, it is, I believe, of a fundamental importance to keep in mind that we have, as consumers, have a role to play. We need to be selective and make deliberate choice towards forest products produced from sustainably managed forest. Under such conditions, forest can be the catalyst of change for a circular economy and provide renewable, non-toxic material which can be used, reused, repurposed, recycled, and biodegraded in the long run. So very pleased again to participate, and I look forward to the very interesting presentation that we will be receiving today, and of course to, I would say, also sustainably engage with your group, Paola. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominique, and thank you for telling us that indeed wood can be the catalyst for the transition to a circular economy. I always think that if they had to discover wood today, it would be a great discovery. probably just because it's very old and older than humans, it doesn't make the news anymore, right? But if it didn't exist and we discover it today, it would be a
Definitely.
fantastic discovery. So let me now give the floor to our forestry officer, Alicia Kakpratz, for a presentation on concrete circularity actions in furniture and consumption. Alicia has been really the driving force behind this study, so nobody better than her will be able to take us through the story that this publication tells. So over to you, Alicia.
Paula. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, everybody online. Thank you for giving me the floor and for opportunity of presenting this interesting study. And I will talk today about the furniture sector, but before we go to the furniture consumption, it is important for us to understand what is circular economy and how we should deal with that and how it translates to the forest sector. For many of you, the circular economy may appear as a concept that is very artificial and not really attached to reality. It is also difficult to understand it sometimes. In 2017, there was a study conducted by the scientists in the Netherlands that concluded that there are 114 different definitions of circular economy. Today, maybe there are even more. But what we need to understand as consumers is that circularity does not always equal sustainability, because as we come back, for instance, to this example of recycling, we need to understand the recycling also includes environmental and socio-economic externalities, for instance, that are related to emissions and also use of energy, as well as specific labor conditions and strains on humans who work in difficult conditions in the recycling industry. We need to understand that circularity is rather one of the means of achieving sustainability, and our objective is to achieve sustainability and sustainable development goals. While we have so many definitions of circular economy, and it's difficult to find one that corresponds to everybody, it is important to understand that all of these definitions based on the fact that there are some principles that are common to all these definitions to which we try to stick when we talk about circular economy. And that means designing the waste and pollution out of the economic system. That also means keeping products and materials in use in the system for as long as possible so that we can allow regeneration of natural systems. And before we go into the considerations of circularity in any forest-based industry, we need to think about the circularity of the natural forest-based systems. And for that, we need to remember that to ensure circularity in forest-based industries, we need to protect forests. And that means we need to stop deforestation in the region where it still occurs. We need to restore ecosystems. That means we need to plant trees and restore landscape wherever it is needed and wherever it is possible. We also need to use wood from sustainably managed forests. And that means that we allow the regeneration of ecosystems so that we do not lead to the exhaustion of the resource. And we also need to use wood-based materials which are renewable and biodegradable. And that means that as consumers, we choose products that do not contain the composites that are difficult to recycle. So let us now move to the furniture consumption. And some of you can still remember that in the old times, when we bought furniture, it was for life. It was repaired, it was renovated, and sometimes even passed to the next generation. We have, some of us maybe have some pieces of furniture that comes from grandma or even they are older. Nowadays, if we think about the furniture industry, I think we can tell that we are all fashion victims because we have so many choices. So you can see, I could not put all of the choices that we have, but there are so many choices for one simple function of the table. So we have to keep it in mind. Therefore, today, our consumption of the furniture is driven by fashion, and we change furniture very often, sometimes even more than once a year, and industry allows that. That actually means that often we buy low quality, cheap furniture that has a short lifespan. And that mass production contributes to creation of enormous amounts of waste. Because also the demand for secondhand furniture is very low nowadays. It is not interesting to buy this furniture also because of the price compared to the new furniture. The furniture today is made of different composites and different materials, which makes the furniture difficult to recycle. So what can we do as consumers? What are the concrete actions that we can do at the individual level? The most impact that we can make as consumers is to avoid the consumption and reduce the consumption to the extent possible. That means that we should adopt minimalist mindset. We should also choose renting instead of buying. And when we decide to buy, we should be conscious and read labels. Most of wood comes from different places in the world, but when we can and we have this choice, we should choose local. Also, we should choose certified products or products from recycled materials. And here on the screen, you can see two the most renowned certification schemes that allow you to make sustainable choices. That means that wood comes from forests that are managed in a way that allow ecosystems to be regenerated, and we do not exhaust the resource. Also, consider secondhand, if that is possible, and also understand the consequences of your choices when you choose solid wood furniture or if you choose wood from particle boards or those using composites. Further down the value chains, as consumers, we can contribute to reusing and recycling of materials, reusing of products and recycling of materials. We can do it investing in design that, first of all, lasts, or in the products that can be disassembled, or the materials can be recycled. Also, you can see that on the market we have modular furniture that appeared. That means that this is the furniture that is composed of different cubic elements, and they can be arranged in different configurations depending on the needs, and that prolongs the life of products. Finally, if we go further down the value chain, then we can also contribute as consumers to recovery of products and the treatment of materials. And that means that we can decide to repair when we can. It is not always possible, but there are services available. We can return furniture to the shop if we can. They can restore items and recover the materials. We know that some big furniture producers already have this system. You can have, for instance, a bond to buy new furniture when you return furniture to that shop. And then we can also give your old furniture, the furniture you don't want, to charity services, and they sell this furniture as is. They can sometimes upcycle or recycle the materials. And on the right-hand side, you can see an example of upcycled piece of furniture that gives, this activity gives jobs and also income to socially excluded people. And for your information here, you can see also the logos of some of the organizations in Geneva that can come to your place for free with a truck and collect furniture, so you don't have to throw it away and it's not wasted. So as we have so many opportunities to contribute to circularity at the individual level, as consumers, we also should drive the change at the global level. And we can do it by advocating for concrete policy actions, by supporting policies that promote sustainable production and consumption patterns, by supporting policies or advocating for policies that support design. That means, for instance, standardized furniture parts, such as handles or hinges that can be used by different producers, so they can be reused. When they are not used anymore, they are not thrown away, but can be recovered for production of other furniture. Also, that means using in the design the biodegradable wood-based materials for durability and recycling. And also we could introduce the extended producers responsibility schemes that function very well in other sectors, such as, for instance, home appliances or electronics. And for that, we need to develop a take-back infrastructure and also maintenance and repair, and advocate for banning the landfill of wood. And that is what is happening already in the European Union, but it is not the case in other parts of the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and thank you. It's very interesting. And while I was listening to the presentation, I was wondering whether this would really be turned also into sort of short manual for buyers. You know, there are so many things that you're saying, and somehow we know, but we do not follow. So it's very good to be reminded about that. Well, then from furniture, let me move on to fashion and give the floor to our colleague Leonie Meyer, who has been working in the forest sector, but also on the linkages between the forest sector and fashion for a long time, for a presentation on concrete circularity actions in fashion materials. Leonie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Paula, and it's a pleasure to be here. Covering this really important topic and one of my favorite sub-themes on fashion. And in my presentation in the next 10 minutes, I will just run through a short background on the sustainability challenges in textiles, more in general, why it's important to talk about fibers and where forest fibers actually come in. Concrete actions to advance circularity in textiles. So some of you may be already quite familiar with some of the big facts floating around in textile industry. A lot of this is related to fast fashion, to the fast fashion system that we're currently in. And just to highlight a few here, I mean, for example, that it takes 200 years for discarded clothing made of non-biodegradable material to decompose in landfills. Some of us might have seen pictures recently of huge mountains of discarded clothing in the Atacama Desert in Chile. That's sadly just one of many examples out there where our consumption and our overconsumption in the end becomes very visible. And the human costs are enormous, related to workers' rights, safety, and health. Also considering that a large proportion of the garment industry, for example, is made up of women, and there's an additional gender component there. And also, of course, the environmental costs related to water pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and microfiber releases. Just to pick up on the central figure there, less than 1% of materials used to produce clothing is actually recycled into new clothing. So we do have this massive problem of waste not being used as a resource and not turned into what could be new clothing. And that's also where the circular economy, of course, can come in. This figure is actually from a study recently done by UNEP, looking at the whole value chain and circularity opportunities in textiles more in general. But I wanted to highlight it here just because it makes quite visible the fact, why we talk about fibers is because they have the third highest impact, climate impact across the value chain, across the textile value chain. And this primarily arises from the production of synthetic fibers. Of course, there are other impacts besides climate that are directly that also affect the sustainability of the textile value chain. But I think since climate change is also affecting trees and forests, this was quite good to highlight here and make it stand out. So we talk about textiles made from trees, but actually the more technical term is man-made cellulosic fibers or cellulosic fibers. And as you can see here, they make up quite a small proportion of the global fiber market. The majority is dominated by polyester, which is coming from non-renewable fossil fuel resources. So quite a problematic, I think, uptake there. Cotton covers around 30%, and then other fibers that includes, for example, wool and silk and leather and so on. So what are the advantages of cellulosic fibers? Well, they are made from renewable feedstocks, mostly wood, but also bamboo and other plant cellulose rather than fossil fuels, as is the case with polyester. And in addition, we don't need the amounts of fertilizers and pesticides that is, for example, used in cotton production to grow trees. And then, in addition, trees sequester carbon while they grow, and I think Alicia has already mentioned that with other forest products, we have the same mechanism where we have this additional benefit actually of having trees that while they grow sequester carbon and therefore lower the overall carbon impact or climate impact actually of products. On the right, you see the different types of cellulose fibers. Names that you probably come across in your clothing when you check your labels. And I just wanted to highlight that here because not all of them actually are, from a sustainability standpoint, really good, like very environmentally friendly. For example, viscose is under certain weak legislation still produced with dirty manufacturing processes using toxic chemicals. So these really need to be properly managed in order for that to be a more sustainable fiber choice and for example also to synthetic fibers. So what does a circular value chain of cellulosic fibers look like or could look like? This is actually from the publication that we're presenting today, and I think it provides an excellent visualization of what we're talking about. And you can see here after wood goes into the is harvested and goes into production of pulp, when from the moment that the wood is turned into the fabric, design is really a key aspect. So that's really something that needs to be taken into account when you assess the sustainability, but also the of a garment is that at the design stage you can already determine whether at the end of its useful life the product, so in this case for example the t-shirt, goes into residual waste or can be fed back into this cycle of production. And this is really what I think we need to be aware of when we talk about circularity in textiles and also in cellulosic fibers, is that not all that is natural equates with sustainable, and also Alicia has mentioned that, and I think that applies to other sectors as well. You can, for example, have a jacket made up of cellulosic fibers that is then treated with an anti-wrinkle coating that then again makes it non-decomposable. So that's really, where design is coming in, and that's also something we work on with the Forest for Fashion Initiative, which I will mention a bit later. Another important consideration is that the fiber input, so the wood pulp that is eventually turned into textiles, comes from sustainably managed sources, and there again, there's a huge parallel to the furniture sector there as well. In addition, there's still some deforestation linked to viscose production, although companies have been steadily addressing this issue, and so ensuring that forests are managed in a way that maintains or enhances their ecological, social, and economic values is really important there. And lastly, chemical pollution, as I mentioned briefly before, needs to be consistently addressed also in the cellulosic fiber sector. And recently there have been studies, actually guidelines by the VHC for controlling emissions, and that's really a good step forward in the right direction, I would say. So what are the opportunities for circularity? There's definitely several opportunities, but one of them is the uptake of certain fibers, and you see here on the right graph by textile exchange, which shows that the 55 to 60% of the total amount of wood fibers was certified. Unfortunately, only 0.4 came from recycled sources, so there's huge potential there to scale that up. Closed loop technology already exists and needs to be scaled up, and there's a lot of financing potential there as well. Since the lyocell process can be used for chemical recycling, it could also be used to for example, to recycle post-consumer cotton waste and turn that into new fibers for textiles again. And then also I see quite a big potential for shift to alternative feedstocks and innovative fibers, also beyond wood, from agricultural waste. And I will cover that in a second. I'm just going to speed up a bit. So how do we get there? 3 points, and actually most of them are really similar to what we heard for the furniture sector as well. Stronger governance and policies, scaling up fiber innovations for renewable, recyclable and safe materials, and they're also promoting eco-design. And then lastly, changing consumption habits. Just wanted to highlight this as an example. Although extended producer responsibility policies are really just one of several policy options and one that should be applied. I think, you know, if consumers advocate for a more extended producer responsibility, it could have a great effect on actually increasing the rates. This has been applied in France since 2007, and they have seen a threefold increase since then already, and also created financial incentives to promote eco-design through, for example, through the use of recycled content. And this EPR scheme requires all legal entities producing textiles and clothing in the French textile market to take responsibility of their disposal. Then secondly, scaling up fiber innovations and circular design. There's more and more companies out there now that are setting up alternative textile value chains based on agri-residues, for example, grain straws or banana stems or pineapple leaves, and this can actually be also a great way to lower the problematic inputs. For example, if we have deforestation in the supply chain, that could be avoided in this way. And design is really key here. So you have to simplify, you have to make products that can be made again. So simplifying the design, that the entire garment, for example, the fabric, the fillings, the trimmings, are all manufactured from one polymer in order for that to be recycled again. And also durability is a key aspect in the design phase here. Lastly, changing consumption habits, that's probably one of the most difficult ones. We've talked a lot about recycling, but of course recycling also takes a lot of energy and sometimes has negative externalities, as we have heard also for other sectors. So extending the lifetime of clothes and textiles is really important in order to actually avoid having to make more products made from new resources. There's a lot of new renting schemes out there, so rent rather than buy could be an option. It's especially also important to then return products after use, for example, for repair or upcycling or refurbishing. It works for the furniture sector, but also actually could work really well for the textile sector. Checking product labeling and questioning brands about their practices as regarding chemical safety and decent working conditions. And I think to highlight here is that even though we always ask consumers to check and to understand what's in their clothes, and they also need to trust claims that are made in their clothing. So transparency and working with brands to actually understand the whole magnitude of their supply chains is important, but that's also something that's beyond even consumers. So yeah, consumers can't do it all essentially. But what they can do is to avoid synthetics. There's a lot of people in the zero waste movement now who try to avoid plastics, so why not also apply that to clothes? And again, similar to furniture, material blends in textiles definitely make recycling much more difficult. So yeah, monopolymers is always a better option. And emphasizing quality again, which then again would lead into extending the lifetime. This is just to wrap up. Finally, some common myths about textile materials that I wanted to uncover. That recycled polyester, for example, is a good option or is a sustainable material choice. However, actually recycled polyester fares worse in terms of...
You can also check your camera as well.
During the washing of garments. So even though, yes, recycling is good, but then the externalities might be far greater. Then there's companies often branding plastic leather made of polyurethane as vegan leather, suggesting it's a more environmentally friendly alternative to animal leather. But then at the same time, if you don't tackle the overconsumption also of meat, since leather is a byproduct of the meat industry, you don't really get the desired environmental benefits actually, because you also have again microplastic pollution that can come from this. And then lastly, viscose is more sustainable than cotton. Well, when we compare viscose and cotton, the difference between viscose produced in a coal to viscose produced in a facility that is powered by renewables, or cotton that is rain-fed versus cotton that uses irrigation could be far larger than the difference between them. So I think it's also really important to always look at, look at things in detail, and there's another point there actually about the lack of data that's sometimes available to make these comparisons. So it's always complicated. As a last point, I wanted to highlight here our Forest for Fashion initiative, which is, we've been working on these topics for the past years, and also engaging designers, eco-designers, and raising awareness mainly around these issues that are presented today. And we also launched last year the Forest for Fashion Sports Challenge, reaching out beyond the fashion community to promote circularity in sports clothing. And with this, I will end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Leonie. I think we all learn a few key things about how to be sustainable consumers when it comes to fashion and the importance of forest fibers. And just to stress one of your last points, viscose is more sustainable than cotton, despite everything. And let's not forget also viscose is a forest fiber. I mean, man-made cellulosic fiber, to call it with the correct name. Now, we have finished the two presentations, and now we are opening the floor for question and answers. We have 15 minutes for that. So I'll invite all those connected and participating, and if you have any questions, any curiosity, any comment you want to make, please raise your hand. We will be very happy to take your question. If I'm going to look on my phone and on the, okay, I see Valtteri Katajamaki, please, if you want to take the floor, else introduce yourself and ask the questions. Please go ahead. Hello, please come forward. Oops, we have lost. Oh no, here we go. No? I think someone raised their hand and then disappeared, probably when trying to take the floor. Yes, it's Valtteri. Please go ahead. I see you want to speak, and the floor is yours. Here we go.
Yes, thank you, Paula. I had a bit of a problem with putting the mic on, but I think it works.
I hope I pronounce your name correctly, but if I haven't, please just do it for us.
It sounded very good, Paula. Thank you very much. I'm Valtteri Katajamäki, and I work in the International Labour Office here in Geneva. And thanks a lot for the presenters for the very insightful discussions and presentations. And altogether, congratulations for putting together this timely and relevant publication. I think it provides a balanced and well-researched overview introduction on some of these forest-related opportunities and challenges for circular economy. And it also opens a way for further research and discussions on this new, relatively new topic. And as this is a relatively new topic still, from the ILO perspective, of course, our main interest and questions is to understand the questions related to labor aspects, which I think Leonie in her presentation briefly mentioned. For employment creation of circular economy, but also very much in relation to the quality of work. For example, how can we ensure that the transition to the circular economy can actually provide opportunities to move towards better quality jobs and decent work, for example, in terms of occupational safety and health, formalization, or social dialogue, among other topics, while of course promoting a just transition that takes into consideration both the environmental aspects on the one hand and the decent work outcomes on the other hand. So my question for you is that in your research and also maybe from some other experiences that you have had, what are some of the key labor-related aspects that have come up in relation to forest-based circular economy? And how do you see that some of these, what are some of the key issues, and how do you see that they should be taken into consideration in the discussions on the transition towards a forest-based circular economy? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pass the floor on to Alicia first, and then Leonie, if she has comments, and then I can conclude. Over to you, Alicia, to answer this question. With wishing to ask questions, please raise your hand so I will see it, and I'll give you the floor next. Over to you, Alicia. Alicia, we don't hear you, or at least I don't hear you. I don't know if you're muted.
No.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Paula, and thank you, Valtteri, for a very relevant question. And I wish we could work with you more on every study that we do, so that we have the reflection of the labor issues in all the publications that we issue. I recognize we do not have expertise to go very thoroughly in these aspects, and that's not what we did in this study. But we do recognize, and that's why we wanted to make it part of this publication, the importance of the decency of conditions of work of the workers that are working both in the industry producing furniture and also those related to fashion industry. And that is presentation, and we do recognize that there is no circularity without decency of jobs in this sector. So, Leonie, if you have anything more to add on that.
Yeah, just maybe related to textiles, I think a major issue there, what we see, and like what's unfortunately still the reality for many, is the informality of the recycling. I mean, I don't want to even call it industry, but of the recycling business, I guess, in many countries. So even though the recyclability and recycling is often posed as a sort of solution or gateway for circularity, I think looking at really the working conditions and the social aspects related to textile collection is a really important like starting point, and would be really good to look more into that. I think that's it from.
Thank you, Leonie. One important aspect I wanted to highlight when it comes to labor conditions and circularity is something that I believe we should further explore, is whether circularity also means more local business. and not outsourcing, for instance, in the fashion industry, outsourcing to faraway locations. Because if circularity also means a circular loop within a limited territory, within a city, within a region, then of course labor aspects will be very much related to the conditions of labor of a specific location, country, region. And that I think is an aspect that is worth exploring also with ILO in the future. Although we still have a little bit of time, let me just, I'm going up and down from the list. No, then unless there is anything else, any other comment, we can proceed to the closing of this event. Thanking you all very, very much. I hope that this was a useful event, and I believe there were two very useful presentations. So we are certainly going to share also over the internet. It's actually sometimes a very simple choice. The sustainability choice, we have seen it, is just a matter of knowing and having the information on what choice is best. And I think we have shown you that very often is a simple transition, and very often is really just also a choice of design and materials, and some are more sustainable than others. And that's something we have to remember, that forest-based materials are normally and generally the most sustainable and the most circular, the ones that can be easily recycled, but also the ones that very often last the longest. So I believe that we are advocates of forest products and wood and related materials because we work in this area, but also because we have the data nowadays. We can see and we can prove that wood and forest-based products are the most sustainable. They come from nature, and also they don't have such a strong impact on the environment like others. Of course, with the understanding that we're always talking about sustainable forest management, whatever we take from the environment, we put back. If there are no further requests for the floor or comments from our two speakers, I will just say goodbye to you here. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact Alicia. As I mentioned, Alicia will also come back to you. And we hope to have more of these events soon to really promote circularity and sustainability. I see Dominique is there. Dominique, perhaps I leave it to you to give us two final thoughts and perhaps to know from you if you have learned something today, especially vis-a-vis, I guess the furniture industry was very well known to you, but perhaps in the fashion area. And I leave it to you then to say the final words. Over to you.
Thank you, Paula. I didn't mean to intervene, but I just wanted to say that I really found the event today very, very interesting, very timely at this critical juncture, and I must say personally I learned a lot, and I look forward to further engagement with you and your team. Thank you very much for that, and we will make sure we also publicize it on the FAO Geneva website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then, well, be sustainable, make the right choices, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.